Hi, this is Dr. Toby Moma, your host on Health and Wellness with Dr. Toby, inviting you to watch our show this week. We have a special guest, Miss Felicia Downs. She's a local of the area, trained, raised in Bastrop. She's going to share her heart with us about the community. She's a licensed community social worker, went to ULM and went on to Southern University in New Orleans, and she's going to be pouring out her heart about her pet project. She just opened an agency called Resilience, and is designed to mitigate the after effects of perinatal morbidity mortality on our young children under 1 year of age. You don't want to miss it. She's going to pour out her heart about family, about the church, about spirituality, and how being a social worker has inspired her to make a difference. This is a lady who's lived a life as a daughter, as a sister, and as a minister in the church, and she wants to be a blessing to you through this medium. So don't miss it. Check it out. God bless you. Jesus is Lord. Hi, I'm Dr. Toby Moma, your host on Health and Wellness today. It's a pleasure to have you on our show. We're honored that you tuned in. We don't want you to touch that dial. We have a great show here with Dr. Miss Felicia Downs. Felicia, you're welcome on our show.
Thank you.
I'll just go back to saying Felicia is we used to sit on the same road in the church, in the
Yes.
assembly, when I was in Jackson, in Monroe, Louisiana, West Monroe, and I got to know her. She was sweet as a pie, and today she's branched out. She's working for the state, but she owns her own agency called Resilience Agency, and it's inspired to help the perinatal infant mortality, morbidity, mortality rates reduce, especially amongst our children who are under 1 year of age. She's a licensed clinical social worker, trained in ULM and in Southern University in New Orleans, and she's been sharing her heart about social work. So if you missed the show, look up the rest of it the past weeks. You will get an education on social work. You will be inspired to become a social worker. I mean, Felicia is a daughter. She's a sister. She's an inspiration to many young people. And now she's even an entrepreneur. I don't know if you have employees.
No, I
Not
don't.
yet.
Oh,
Okay.
no, not yet.
You're doing that on your own. Okay. So, but she's taking the bull by the horn and trying to make a difference in this community. And her agency is highly recommended by me. I know she's gonna be true to her word. And she didn't say this, but she takes private insurance, Blue Cross, and she can also take
Medicaid.
Medicaid too, and Medicare. So if you have any of those, we're going to put her address and her phone number on the screen, her email. Call her. It's all about lifting families up, making families what they are supposed to be. And in the context of the Bible, when God made Adam, he says, it is not good that man be alone.
Right.
So even God himself said family is a good thing. And that's what her agency is all about. So I want to talk about your spiritual journey, Felicia. Tell us about when did you come to the saving knowledge of Jesus and how did that happen?
I was raised in a Christian home, and I believe I first accepted Christ as my Savior when I was 10 years old. But I strayed. I did my own thing. And just sort of just wanted to experience life, and just by the time I graduated high school, I went to college, and not that I did a lot, but he was not the focus. And so by the time I was 23, I really began to look at where I was. I had graduated college, I was living on my own, and just really felt a tug that I needed to make him the center. And at the age of 23, I began to focus and to really wanted the best for my life, and I knew that imparted his wisdom and his guidance, and it was important that I put him first.
And you said your mom was a major inspiration on your
Oh, yes.
spiritual journey.
Yes.
Wow, that's
My
awesome.
mom, she continues to pray for me daily. She continues to, and she just, and even when there's tough decisions to be made, I go to her for advice. And she's not in the field of social work, but just good, godly advice and wisdom And sometimes if she feels as though God hasn't led her to say anything, she say, I don't have anything for you. You just need to pray about it for yourself. And it's, a lot of times I'm sort of manic at times and I got a lot going on. And so she'll say, you need to settle yourself and just meditate on him. And
Is that
that's what
how
I
she
practice.
says it?
Uh-huh.
Settle yourself and meditate.
Yes. She means like calm down, and you listen to what he has to say, and then sometimes then the word comes, confirmation will come to let me know that I've made the decision or I'm making the right choice.
So you said in the early days when you were young, she used to read the Bible to you girls and boys, your family, your brothers and sisters, and encourage prayer
Yes. She
every
encouraged
morning.
prayer.
Okay.
She encouraged us to really, she encouraged Bible study. I have a lot of books. And I get that from my mom that she has a lot of books, spiritual books, books on different topics, on the vision, on faith, on the spiritual gifts, on the Holy Spirit. And so I think through her, she always talks about the new book she's getting or the new author that
Wow.
she's reading and what she's getting out of it. And she's a great note taker. She'll have those
Wow.
notebooks and she just, write notes. And so people laugh. And one time for Mother's Day, we used to say, what you want? And it was like, I think I've been looking at this new Bible. I was thinking like, okay, most people want something else. But, that's how she does. And she does a lot of research and study. And so she sort of imparted that in our lives, that it's important to seek God and read the scriptures for yourself.
So you'll tell any mother who's not, maybe who's conditionally thinking of giving up on her child, that don't give up because your mom did it and all three of you came out with your head straight, right?
Right. Some of us had, we hit a couple of walls and butted heads. And even in that wisdom and being attentive to God, sometimes I remember right before, in my early 20s, she used to call me and say, you need to go to church, because I had stopped going to church. I had stopped attending services. And so she said, you need to attend church. You need to attend church. And it would just irritate me. And she stopped calling. And then we looked back on it a couple years later, and she said the Lord told her to stop. And I think that's, as a parent, you have to go as far as God leads you to
Wow.
go. And I think that has happened with all of us, all of our siblings, with all of my siblings, that she has treated us, and our spiritual journey has been different. But I think she has been there as a foundation for us all, that we all call her. When we have to make a tough decision or something's going on, we may send a text down, but we'll call and say, I need you to pray for me about this situation.
Wow.
And so it's not that, and she even was teaching us and has taught us that we don't pray for God to just do what we want him to do, because he's not a genie, but we pray that his will be done and that we be accepting of that will.
So tell us how your faith has shaped your work as a social worker, because you tell me you work with young kids as young as 1 year old, and we're talking of some of them having medical conditions, social dysfunctions. I mean, you go into homes that can challenge a person without faith. If somebody doesn't have a bedrock solid faith, it can literally crush his spirit. So how has your faith helped you stand in the face of this social work vicissitudes, that you see on a daily
Yes.
basis? I'd love to hear your stories, but how does your faith helped you
Yeah.
walk through all this child issues that you come across so regularly?
I think it replenishes me. That it's emotional refueling. That when I'm having a stressful day or when things are not going out, then my faith, I know that there is hope, and that I have to rely on him to fill me back up. And that's one of the things I try to impart in my clients, that I may not utilize certain words, but it's always about hope, healing, and restoration. And that clients are in different phases of that. For one, I may be needing to be, there may be a instilling of hope that you're going to get through this, you're going to overcome this situation. And the other one is healed. is healing, that we can work through this, that you're going to overcome, that this is going to get better, and the other is just, we're going to try to get you back to where you were, that we're going to restore those things that were lost or those things that have been impaired. And I think my faith helps me to do that on a daily basis.
So you literally keep hope no matter how devastating the circumstances are. I mean, this girl is 16 and she's living on the streets as a prostitute, but you see her and instead of pointing a finger, you try to cuddle her and hug
Yes.
her.
And I try to find her strengths in that situation. And some of it may be the only thing is that she's willing to meet with me. And if we can build on their strength, and that, there's a lot of lack of trust, everyone else may have let her down, but if I can be consistent and show her respect, there may be something that she's never received before or never experienced. But if I can be mindful of that, of my interactions, to treat her with respect and there's some dignity there, to let her know that she's valuable and that I'm here to listen to what she has to say. And that I think we can open up those other areas and then work on whatever the problem is.
So you diminish, if you can, her weaknesses and try to amplify her strengths.
Yes. Yes.
So in the church world, how does a social worker, what do you think a social worker can do in the church? I mean, we're into missions. My wife and I go on missions every year. If I took you to Africa with me, like I'm hoping you'll come, how can a social worker impact the mission field? What do? I see patients, I preach the gospel. How do you come into play in the gospel manifestation in this world? What role does social work help you in making the gospel even more pronounced around the world?
I think talk about the healing aspect of it and how we can overcome. And that's what Christ came to do for us. And even though when they talk about and listening to their situation, and when we talk, I can talk to them about, all the things that I'm able to give them in the natural. But there's something that only I can't give, and that only comes through your relationship with Christ.
Well, any part of the church you play a role in that you think you're gifted in, like singing, preaching, I mean, as an individual, not necessarily as a social worker, but what area of the church dynamic do you see yourself fitting in best in? Prayer, counseling, preaching, teaching, singing, musical instruments?
I think I fit in best in counseling, and I say counseling loosely.
Okay.
Because I also think I do a lot of coaching and trying to exhort and build people up when they come to me and we're talking. So it may be I do a lot of work one-on-one. So I'm not the person that will probably always be on center stage or in front of individuals, but I try to educate and encourage people on a daily basis. And whenever I come in contact with them, to let them know that there is something that things happen, things can change, and that we can get through this. And I think that's really what people want to hear, that you're personable, that you're able to touch them where they are.
So tell me, the license you get as a clinical social worker, does it give you the same ability as a licensed counselor? For example, if a church said, can Felicia come and help us with counseling not divorced couples, but couples going through challenges?
Yes.
Will that license help you do that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Have you played any, I'm not saying you should name names, but have you had any influence in couples who are going through rocky situations? Have you been able to, especially in the church, talk to them and say your own view from your social work perspective?
Yes.
Okay.
I have. About a month ago, I was working with a couple, and the wife was how I got brought into the situation. It was through the wife. And we began to talk about, and she named all of the things that the husband was not doing. And she was just saying how he wasn't helping. And so she named all of this laundry list. And I began to talk to her about the 5 love languages. Wow. And how that
You
looks
read
different.
The book,
I read the book.
It's part of the social work curriculum?
No, it's not part of the curriculum.
Okay.
But when I was able to get her to see that, and I gave her the assignment because what her love language is And to do all these things may not have been his language. And then how important it was to make sure that you understood, number one, each other's language. First, understood what your own language was. And then how to make sure that you're covered. And so we talked last week, I think it was last week, and she said, just us doing the test and we understanding what it looks like for him to show me love and appreciation and me showing him, that it just made their communication so much better. And as a result, they were able to parent their child better.
And that's a free service you just
That's
provided.
a free service. So I highly recommend. And then having those tough conversations. Even I was working with a couple who's about to be married that I met, who's, in the church. And I was talking about, having that conversation about what your past. Because a lot of times we go into relationships, we don't want to tell all of us. We don't want to tell our experiences, what has happened to us in the past. And I say, because that person needs to know that information to know what to pray for you on a daily basis about. So if you struggle with addictions, then your spouse needs to know that, even though you can be in recovery. Because the enemy, Satan, doesn't care what he will bring up to divide you and to, destroy you. And so the wife never thought about that. And in talking with the husband, they said they was going to have that hard conversation.
Wow.
About, this is what it's like being me. And this is what my struggles are. And so that gives you a focus in your prayer life every day to pray specifically for your spouse about these issues.
Right. I've heard pastors say this all the time, but it makes sense every time. He says that when God brought Eve to Adam, the Bible says that it was not good that Adam be alone. But the reason why God brought Eve to Adam was not because Adam was lonely, but he was alone. So a lot of people want to get married because they don't want to be lonely.
Right.
But pastors, and I've heard this over years, they say, look, if your motivation for marriage is company, it's not what's gonna make it last.
Right.
Some people I don't want to grow old alone. I just want to have no. The Bible says Adam, God said it's not good that he be alone, but he wasn't lonely. He was actively working on God's assignment.
Right.
So if you're doing the will of God, God will bring you a helpmate.
Yes.
But if you're standing on the corner saying, God, I need somebody to help me, I mean, you're going to get anybody, and that's not going to be the best person for you, So it's something that I've seen a lot in our culture. Young girls, 21, I just want to get married. Why? I just don't want to be alone. Everybody's married. I want to be married. And it's like, you get the wrong end of the stick because you're getting
exactly. I agree. I agree.
Wow. So you joined the assembly in 2008. 2008. Okay. In this age where people move from church to church, you've been pretty consistent. So that tells us a lot about you and the assembly and Pastor Shane and being a part of the community. So that's interesting. What do you tell couples who come to you, and I'm saying this from a Christian perspective, what do you tell them about divorce, about abortion? The reason I'm bringing this up because as a doctor, I know what the medical world tells them. If you have a child out of wedlock and you don't want it, terminate it.
Right.
If you don't love him, give him the piece of paper.
Right.
But as a social worker, do you have that? You can't just take what the textbooks and what the ivory towers and universities have taught us. I mean, as a Christian, how do you bring that message to a couple who want to terminate or want a divorce from a Christian perspective, as a Christian social worker?
I think I try to look at just try to break down the reasoning. Let us try to work on, you have already came up with this solution, and we're going to just identify this is the solution that you came up with. But let's look at the reasons for this. Let's start there. Why are you saying that this is the only solution that's possible? And look at what caused us to get to there. Because you can end this relationship and go into another relationship, and the same problem still exists. Because it's not necessarily the person, but it may not be just this one person, but it may be something within you or something within me. And I think it's important for them to have that conversation to let them know that, that we need to work together. And how can we work together? Unless there is something like a physical abuse or there's something that's putting someone's life in danger, then I try to work to mitigate and to for that family to stay together and talk about the pros of that. How can we do this together? And what does that mean? Because it's hard. And even with clients who may have experienced abortion, I've never met a client prior to having an abortion, but I've worked with clients who have aborted a child and talked to them about what that means and does that mean for them today, and how we can overcome that and recover from that. Because a person is coming, if they're sharing that information with you, they're coming from a place of vulnerability, and they want to know that they're being heard. And so we're working on the reasons that they got there. Why was it? Was it depression or whatever? So that's the issue that I'm treating, that I'm encouraging them that, despite the mistake that has happened, then we still can overcome and be better, and we don't have to go through this, alone, and there's support available, and we can prevent this from happening again.
Right. My wife was actually a medical director. She was director of a medical practice in New York, and a lady came in and she wanted to terminate the pregnancy, and my wife spent an hour talking her out of it. Obviously not good business for her OBGYN, but what was interesting was a year later, that girl came to my clinic, because I don't work where my wife worked,
Yeah.
and she recognized my name,
Uh-huh.
and she was so thankful that my wife talked her out
Out
of
of it.
the abortion. And she kept that baby. She came with that baby boy to my clinic, and she was so thrilled that my wife gave her the chance to keep, because the only reason she wanted to terminate the child was she felt the father wouldn't support her, and she'll be a single parent, and,
Right.
so a lot of people will, if you show them another part of the
Right.
picture, if you don't go there condemning, but saying
Exactly.
there's more, there's another option, there's
Right.
so those are some of the benefits of social work. You can see 10 years down the line the difference you made.
Right.
you
Right.
know.
Right.
Interesting. We haven't had any, God forbid, shootings in Monroe, in this part of the country, school shootings and all that.
No.
So far, good. So we haven't had any of that. I mean, the most we've had is probably a child, maybe bullying and
Right.
shooting, and what are you seeing in that area of the bullying? Is it? I know there's a Green Oaks facility. Who goes to Green Oaks, and then who goes for counseling with you and other counselors? Because I want to know, do they have to shoot a gun to go to Green Oaks, or is it just what does the judge make? When does he make them go to Green Oaks? Because Green Oaks is like a detention center, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It is the local juvenile detention center, and it just depends on the judge and how the case is presented to her to make that decision.
So rape is you go to jail, right? No matter
Right.
how old you are.
I believe so.
Right.
Yeah,
And then maybe
and it may be you may be held for a certain
Certain
period of
amount of time.
time, and then you're adjudicated more through the state
Physical
Office of
assault, right?
Juvenile Center. But you can be incorrigible and go to Green Oaks,
Oh,
and so you're just not following the rules at home. You're a runaway, or you're not being disrespectful. Then the judge can order you that you spend a certain amount of time. In Green Oaks, I've known clients who've been there a couple, fighting, just physical fighting, aggression.
Okay.
They've gone to Green Oaks for a couple of days.
How about Job Corps? What does that do for our young people? You heard of Job Corps?
Job Corps provides them an opportunity to get job skills and also complete their GED.
So it's for kids who didn't finish high school technically.
Yes.
Okay.
So if they didn't finish and or traditional high school was not for them, it also gives them the opportunity to learn a trade.
So it doesn't have to be a child who's dysfunctional that goes to Job Corps.
Oh no.
Okay.
Some people just were not they can't handle traditional school settings. They just
Okay.
don't learn. That's not the optimal way for them to learn. And so Job Corps is another opportunity for those who may have dropped out. And they, not that they had any behavior problems, they just didn't like school and didn't finish it.
And it's a 3 month or so. I know you spent like 3 months
Hmm.
doing a long, yeah, okay, interesting. So, and then after the GED, they can go get a college degree if they want to
Right.
pursue that. Okay. So it's a way of getting back on track.
Right, right, right.
And what we know is that a lot of young people start off wrong and get back on track. If
Yes.
you look through history, some of the greatest leaders were young, dysfunctional teenagers. But if you read the story of Billy Graham will tell you in his teenage years he was incorrigible. His son, Franklin Graham, in his teenage years was also incorrigible. And so I think what we learn is that never give up, don't lose hope.
Right.
Like the Bible says, train up a child in the way that he should go. When he grows old, he or she will not depart from it. Do you support um, going to, what's your preference for training up a child? Some people just do Sunday school. Some people get all this books from Focus on the Family,
Hmm.
watch the videos. What do you think is recommended in your raising a child textbook?
I think something as simple as having conversations with your child, asking your child about their day, having a set time daily that you can have, that your child can meet with you one on one, and you ask about their interests, their goals, what they desire, and every child is different. So even though you may be a parent of 3 or 4 children, each one is different, and what they need from you is different. And so you may have to be a little bit more attentive to one than you would others. You may have to pull in additional resources like books or different exercises or skills than you would the other. And I think that if we are willing to start with just being available physically and emotionally to children, I think that is the best part of training, and allowing a child the freedom to be able to come to you and being able to express themselves and learning how to express themselves. A lot of times children haven't learned proper self-regulation. They don't know how to regulate their emotions because parents don't regulate their emotions. We scream and holler. And I think if you just have a child you're able to ask them daily, how was
Right.
your day? If you could change anything about your day, what would it be? And I've heard parents to say they talked about a student who was mean to them. And so they noticed the pattern. They were able to intervene in that situation, find out my child is being bullied. But if they would probably just ask the question, are you being bullied? And or you're not being bullied, are you? And so that gives the child like, well, you really don't want to know, so I'm going to say no,
No,
you know.
right.
But I think if you're just willing to be open and being available and know that you're attentive and that you want to hear what they have to say.
Wow. We just want to pray for our community.
Okay.
Father, we pray for the city of Monroe, West Monroe. We lift up the children. We ask that the blessings of God be upon them. Make them great, because your word says that our sons and daughters shall be mighty for signs and wonders. This is Toby Morma and Felicia Downs telling you Jesus is Lord. God bless you.